Starting soon, please take your seats. Starting soon, please take your seats.
Calling them. I'm so sorry, Layla May. Yes, yes, now, exactly.
And then we start?
Yeah, I think so.
Printout?
This is you. Yeah, this is the printout for you, and then you were to sit next to me. Good morning, everyone. If I can kindly ask everyone to find their seats. It's wonderful to see all of you this morning. We will be starting in just a few minutes. I'm so happy to see everyone introducing themselves. This is what COP28 is all about. And I will hand it over to the UAE Pavilion team, and then we will begin. Thank you. Welcome to the beautiful UAE Pavilion in the Blue Zone at COP28. We are so thrilled to see all of you. Today, our event will be Mobilizing Islamic Finance for Climate and Nature, which is a really critical and interesting topic because of all the issues facing the climate-nature gap. This is the one that has very little and very few solutions. So what we're hoping to discuss today is to identify some of the solutions to this gap And what everyone here knows and understands is that when there is a gap, opportunities exist. And this is what we are hoping to discuss and engage and create a legacy for this topic here today. Before we begin the panel, I will call our Director General of Emirates Nature WWF onto stage, Leila Abdul-Latif, who will provide some background and also give us some inspiring words. So Leila, over to you.
Thank you, Monica. Good morning, everybody. Assalamu alaikum, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We're extremely excited to be here today. Thank you for all joining us, and we're very excited to delve into this urgent issue of the widening gap for financing of nature and climate projects. And essentially focusing very much so on the opportunity, as Monica mentioned, to mobilize Islamic finance towards nature and climate, an area that we believe is very much untapped and has a lot of opportunity moving forward. As an NGO that works on the ground very closely with local community members, with the private sector, with the government, we definitely know the uphill battle to essentially design and scale up those projects that can become commercially viable and attractive to the right sort of capital, but that at the end of the day essentially ensure nature and climate solutions as well. Globally, I think we all know the statistic, but the majority of financing towards nature and climate projects comes from both the public and philanthropic sources. But there is a large opportunity to really look into engaging finance stakeholders and the private sector to drive solutions for climate mitigation and adaptation. And this calls for greater capacity building and the development of partnerships to ensure that those monetary gains and socioeconomic returns as well from nature-based projects are actually recognized. I don't think we do enough of a good job at highlighting the importance of these projects and how they should be recognized as attractive for different types of capital. Now, nature conservation and credible nature solutions can contribute positive impact towards equity, human welfare and development, and these goals, as we know, are very much aligned to Sharia principles, but also to ESG targets. Islamic finance is a natural partner for the sustainability agenda, and it can also help divert essentially financial flows towards human activities that have a positive impact on the environment and moving away from activities that actually have a negative impact. Yet what we've realized through our collaboration over the last year and a half, I think even a little bit longer with our stakeholders, is that there hasn't yet been a mechanism that truly integrates Islamic finance towards climate nature development until now. And we're very excited about this panel today to open up and share with you some of the new opportunities that are coming to place. Today, here in the UA Pavilion, I am privileged to announce progress on a global initiative, essentially focusing on seizing the opportunity with a focus on mobilizing Islamic finance from the Global South towards advancing nature solutions in the Global South. So very much a South-to-South initiative, which will really follow a multi-stakeholder approach between visionary institutions, Islamic finance stakeholders across the Asia-Pacific region, with the goal of creating the Global Islamic Finance Program for Climate, Nature, and Development. This program aims to create a framework that facilitates the origination of bankable nature-based solutions that help address climate mitigation, adaptation, whilst also ensuring that those pipeline projects are essentially focusing on socioeconomic co-benefits. And the program aims to structure a mechanism that will blend development, private and philanthropic finance, helping to originate and bring projects to an investment readiness stage. I'd also like to make one more announcement before we kick off with a very interesting panel. Today, I'm proud to announce the formation of the Founding Advisory Committee with founding members including the Ajman University Center for Excellence in Islamic Finance, WWF International, Emirates Nature WWF, the Islamic Development Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, HSBC, Securities Commission Malaysia, and Simmons & Simmons. And this diverse group of organizations will really drive the initiative forward prior to more announcements and hopefully a launch at COP29 by creating a consortium of partners in private equity and venture capital, global Islamic charities, Tier 1 anchor partners from MDBs, key governments and philanthropists, and concessional debt partners, all with the goal of establishing a pipeline of projects for both bankable nature solutions and nature-based solutions in an investment framework at a global, local, and regional level. So we're very optimistic about this. And we look forward to engaging with all of you here in the room today to see how you can be a part of this initiative alongside us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that very inspiring speech, Leila. We would like to now call on Dr. Adnan Aziz, Professor of Practice and Director of the Center for Islamic Excellence in Islamic Finance from Ajman University. Try saying that on day 5 of COP28 in the morning. So please, welcome.
That's fine. I guess mine is working. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much for a splendid start. Leila, thank you for putting these nice words together. I think you have already set the scene in a way. But if I can pick up from where Leila actually left, and she talked about the specific program we've been working on together for the last couple of years very actively, and now we are very proud to have a lot of other advisory committee members with us. This program is called Global Islamic Finance Program for Climate, Nature, and Development. What I'll do is there are a couple of slides. I'll quickly run those through, primarily in the interest of making sure that the audience and the other speakers as well, they pick up from that we will intend to have a dedicated brainstorming session around that program, and we would like to pick on their thoughts, being also the advisory committee members, and allow for audience as well to interact with us and the panel on that. If I can have the slides, I hope they're there. Okay, so basically, as Leila mentioned earlier, it's extremely important that we look for innovative financing solutions for climate and nature agenda. Islamic finance also needs to be a part of it. And from that perspective, what we thought was that anything which is proposed should be built on some informed understanding. So in order to put some numbers to it, so basically what we realized that if I were to refer to the data from 2010 and 2020, in that 10 years period, we saw conventional banking and finance industry putting about $40 trillion into this space. Now, when we look at the Islamic banking and finance industry, and despite the fact Leila mentioned earlier, there's a natural synergy, one would expect a lot more coming from the Islamic side of it. Unfortunately, however, the numbers are not very, for lack of a better word, very encouraging. That's because what we see is in the same period, we only saw $100 billion coming from Islamic banking and finance industry. Now, obviously, it's a smaller subset of the global industry, which means that we don't necessarily expect it at the same scale. But even if we went by the same proportion with which conventional banking and finance industry has gone into it, we would have expected or wanted to see at least $1 trillion into it. So we are 900 billion behind, at least in that sense. So we wanted to understand that there must be a good reason. If there is a natural synergy, there must be something stopping this from translating into the practice. And the 3 impediments we figured out were that one, banks, Islamic financial institutions do not necessarily have the capacity to understand the risk involved in it. That's one. 2, they do not necessarily understand the frameworks and the taxonomies, which is where they need to take a view on. And 3rd, and the most important one has been that the lack of bankability, or no bankability, in fact, in a number of cases as well. Remember, Islamic banks and financial institutions, just like conventional ones, and sorry, I'm sweating because I had to rush. There was a long queue, and I knew that I'm late. So it's not because I'm overly nervous, okay? So what happened is that the 3rd and the most critical one is the bankability, lack of bankability. Now, Islamic financial institutions, like any financial institution, they have a fiduciary capital to manage, which means they have to aim to put this money into a play where they're able to, one, preserve this capital, and two, they're able to generate some financial returns for the stakeholders. Now, if that is not the case, even if we ignore the first two impediments, which is not being able to understand the risk involved, and anything else for that matter, and the frameworks, even if they had that risk appetite, they will not necessarily be in a position to do so. So hence why we thought the informed understanding is important, but also we cannot have a program which is one size fitting all. Laila mentioned that it has to be aligned with global, regional, and local infrastructures as well, and it has to be appealing to everyone. Hence why we thought of coming up with this program. What is important, however, in this journey, and thanks to all the stakeholders who we have engaged with over the last 2 years, we have identified there is a potential of at least $30 billion to $100 billion per annum of an Islamic capital which can mobilize into it. Imagine $100 billion over 10 years and up to $100 billion every year. So there's a huge potential, and if we do not take this as an approach, then we are leaving this potential capital out. I must say this is also allowing us to become more inclusive, because so far the global initiatives have been conventionally structured, have not necessarily permitted Islamic capital to come in. So this is a quick feel of it. I'm not going into the details, to be honest, but just to give you a sense of that amount of work which has already gone into it. It's the blended finance model, which we are looking at. Many of you are aware of that, but it has not been adopted, especially at a scale within Islamic banking and finance industry. So what we are aiming for is, we would like to, it's a 1 to 10 model. So we aim to raise $1, actually $150 million of public and philanthropic money in the form of grant, equity, and debt. And we'll use that to raise private equity or private capital into it, making it a $1.5 billion initial target raise. Remember, we said there is a $30 billion to $100 billion, but we can't just mobilize it all together. Primary reason is nature-based solutions may be there, but we also need to have them bankable. So we also want to become, it's not just mobilizing capital to invest, but also to mobilize, create a pipeline of such opportunities. So this is going to be the first program which will aim at becoming a supplier of such opportunities into bankable space. So I'll stop there just to see that this is a quick visual for you to understand, but we expect to run it through South Asian Hub. We expect it to run regionally and then have local element involved in it. I'll stop here in the interest of time, and now we'll take the opportunity to invite my fellow colleagues, the expert panel here, who will be able to give us more insight into this program. So if I may request now the panelists to join. So if I may request Haniza, if you could please be with us. Haniza is from the Securities Commission, Malaysia. Haniza Sharifatul, sorry. And we also have Dauda. Dauda, if you could please join us. And we also have David from HSBC. Islamic Development Bank is for Dauda. And Aaron, if you could please join us on the stage. Aaron is from WWF International, leading the finance practice. Thank you. So rather than I taking the time to introduce and bore the rest, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself? I think you'll do that justice better than I will do. So if I start with Sharifatul Haniza first.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Adnan, and to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to be up here. I'm Haniza from Securities Commission Malaysia, currently leading the Islamic Capital Market Group for a regulator that has a dual role of regulating and developing. I think for us, for Malaysia, we have I like to share a lot. We took the journey of Islamic finance the same age as how old SC Malaysia is, almost 30 years old. So there's quite a lot of progress that we've done in this space, and maybe we can shed some color to that later, Lieutenant. Thank you.
Dauda, if I may request you.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Dauda Njai. I am the manager of Climate Change and Environment Division within the Islamic Development Bank. So the Islamic Development Bank, as you know, is based in Jeddah, and we are covering 57 member countries. We will speak during this panel on aspects related to climate and nature that we are covering. Thanks.
David.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm David Ramos. I'm the head of sustainability for HSBC Middle East. And the only reason I'm here probably is because we've been supporting philanthropic programs around nature-based solutions for a couple of years, 3 years now. But what we've asking from our partners is that they need to come up. Okay. They need to come up with solutions to make those projects less dependent from philanthropic funds. And I hope this is one of the solutions that will potentially work to raise capital and accelerate private capital into nature-based solutions.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and salam alaikum. I speak a little bit of Arabic because I used to live in Cairo. My name is Aaron Vermeulen. I'm the global lead on finance for WWF International. And our community works on two strategies. One is financing green, what we're going to talk about today. And the other one is greening finance, because you can't only develop bankable investments if you don't also guide investors and come up with credible standards on what is green. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you. I think mine is working, so it's fine, so you can pass it on. Well, thank you very much. So we have now had an opportunity to be introduced to our esteemed panel. If I may start with the set of questions now. So can I ask Sharifatul first, how do you think regulators can play an effective role in programs such as this?
Sorry. Okay, I think just recapping and taking a little bit of context setting, Dr. Adnan, and to everyone in the room today. In this year's World Economic Forum report, I think it was already clearly stated that the next decade will see significant crises in biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse. And this is a decade for action. There's been a lot of conversations on what to do next and what should be actionable. And I think this is my 5th session or panel actually for this COP, where usually we end by saying that, we should be making aspiration become attainable. So I think that's clearly been set out already as context. But I think just to share the Malaysian experience, Dr. Adnan, and to everyone, as I said earlier, Securities Commission Malaysia, SC Malaysia, we have a dual role. We regulate and we develop. We have been at the forefront of Islamic finance. I think you would see us in a lot of the pole positions, league tables setting. And I think the reason why I'm bringing that up is because as early as 2014, Malaysia had recognized that sustainability was a key agenda to be focused on. So as early as 2014, actually, when we realized that there were commonalities in Islamic finance and Islamic capital market specifically, that convergence, as we saw it, gave us opportunities to actually come up with regulatory interventions. And those regulatory interventions was meant not to only give that oversight, but also to develop the ecosystem. And that put us actually in a sweet spot. So 2014, we had come up with the Sustainable Responsible Investment Sukuk Framework. So that was actually a groundbreaking moment, I think, for the country as we pushed out that agenda of sustainability. And I think I think we are happy to share that from 2014 until today, when there was only 10 issuances at less than $1 billion ringgit Malaysia, we are now at about $4+ billion and 25 issuances. And of those issuances, I think we are looking at about 30 to 40% in energy, in renewable, and also some parts of it, maybe about 10% in the S and the G of the ESG. So I think we took that journey very much ahead of the curve from 2014. And when we did that in 2014, we, in fact, I think in 2015 saw the first World's Green Sukuk, then following that in 2017, where we worked on that with World Bank. But prior to that, maybe just to share with you, I know we're talking today about climate, but I think you can't, in the earlier speech, I think, or earlier sharing, you can't speak about climate without recognizing the socioeconomic impact, where what it does to the people. And in 2015, we also had the world's first sukuk for trust schools, where we had actually introduced a step down in coupons. So impact measurement was something that Malaysia was already starting to do in 2015. And today, that size of sukuk, close to about 200 million, has been fully subscribed. It's a program, so it still has a lot of room to grow. So with all that, I think as a regulator, to answer your question, we cannot just focus on the traditional assets, naturally. I mean, for us, the debt base, the sukuk, and the equities is obviously a go-to. And for the Malaysian market, almost 80% of our public listed companies are Sharia compliant. And therefore, that gave a lot of opportunities for fund managers, especially to create portfolios for investors based on Sharia compliant, and then also be able to label it sustainable, responsible, or SRI. And that made us, I think, be very strong and clearly putting an imprint on the sustainability space through the traditional segment. But also at the same time, we recognize that we needed plans. We needed plans to make sure that that agenda was properly documented. And as a regulator, investor protection is key, is paramount. So transparency and disclosure of information was then enhanced. We enhanced requirements for reporting. Our stock exchange introduced reporting requirements with disclosures outlined for anything that was related to sustainability. So that took us to the next step also. But as I said just now, I think we were talking about the traditional segments, right? We're also mindful that alternative assets deserve to be looked at, simply because on that continuum of capital, you have the large corporates, but you also had the smaller companies. And in most nations, SMEs make up a chunk of your economic engine. And for us, we then introduced, actually this year, a guide for our SMEs to take on that transition journey.
Thank you, Sharifa.
Okay.
If you allow me to...
Yeah, there's a lot, so
Thank you, I appreciate it. No, actually, Malaysia indeed is a very forward-looking, and I have to say, amongst the Islamic banking and finance industry, they have been ahead in the curve in a lot of initiatives. So thank you for that insight. Dauda, if I may turn to you, please. Islamic Development Bank, of course, the only multilateral development bank of Islamic OIC member countries. So if I may ask you, from your experience, what's the state of regulatory and the enabling policy infrastructure for effective implementation of mitigation and adaptation strategies across the OIC member countries? Maybe a couple of minutes if you, yeah.
Yes, thank you. And really, we would like to learn more from Malaysia, definitely. I think there was a meeting that was planned to be organized with the ISDB. Yes. And yes, a lot to learn. So the journey from the Islamic Development Bank side, when it comes to ESG and dealing with climate and nature, I would say that started more formally back in 2018 when we had a climate policy, and then we established like an action plan which is going until 2025. And having an action plan looking at supporting our member countries to address, to meet the objectives of the Paris Agreement. And now we are working on aspects related to meeting the objectives of the global biodiversity framework that was established last year in Montreal. So we see it as, intertwined aspects, right, when it comes to climate and nature. We worked on the climate side. We established tools. We have a physical climate risk management system. We are finalizing greenhouse gas accounting. We are systematically looking at climate risks and opportunities in our projects. And you can see that on the energy side, having more and more renewable and also making our investments resilient. I think we are there now. You mentioned the aspects of policy. Now it's very important to work on the upstream side, supporting the member countries in kind of greening their own pipeline, greening their development. So, and this takes me to the sukuks, right? We have also emitted sukuk within the bank, and we see now that by supporting more and more the policy aspects in countries, and also looking at the country's own ambition, we are having more and more assets that we can use for the market to emit sukuks. Now the work we have ahead is really to look at integrating climate and nature, because nature has been a little bit, it's been around, but
yes,
not formally labeled. So we have to work, so we have to work on a green taxonomy within the bank so that we can specifically know which are the assets that we can label as nature, so that we can expand the work, and that is very relevant to the fund you are creating.
I'm actually mindful of the time because there was a late start and we have a shorter time. Can I ask David as well, please? David, from your perspective, how do you think Islamic finance industry can leverage from the experience and expertise of the global banks and the financial institutions, particularly in the context of climate and nature?
Thank you. Thank you. I won't pretend to be an expert in Islamic finance. We have some others in the team from HSBC doing that, but I get to sit in here. What we know for sure is that there is a clear alignment between Islamic finance and ESG finance and green financing. So I think what we're trying to do with this program is to really bring that to life. And there is also a significant gap on financing. The UNEP was saying in a recent report that we need to scale up to $384 million per year, billion dollars per year. And this is more than doubling the actual financing that goes into nature. It's not that in HSBC we haven't been focusing on nature for years already. We had our first risk policy that was tackling nature in 2004, and then several other policies, but those are risk policies. And it's not an integrated approach to nature, like you were saying. Nature is always present, but the focus has been more on the transition to low-carbon economy, but not that much on the impact that transition will have on nature and how to really leverage the fact that nature sits at the core of everything we do, the economy. We've been also supporting the TNFD because disclosures are important. They're not everything. You need to act apart from disclosing, but it's important to start raising awareness on what are the impacts on nature of activities. And even last year as well, we launched, or we made public our statement for nature that hopefully will lead into a policy around nature, integrated policy over time. But basically what we're saying there that we want to mainstream nature in all the decisions we make, all the business decisions we make, and and make sure that we are really considering nature in everything we do. In terms of what can we bring as global financial institutions, obviously we are, because of the size of our bank, we are present in more than 60 markets, 240,000 employees globally. Because of that size, we are exposed to a lot of regulations in different markets that maybe are, some of them are more advanced. So I think it's important that we always operate at the highest standard, because because we're a global brand, we always have those highest standards across the board. So we always need to make sure that we operate at the highest standard, and that helps bring it to the region as well.
Thank you, David. You know, I know Aaron as a guru in adaptation space, but I didn't know that he's so flexible, and he actually adopted a new name as well. I have just noticed it's Andrew. No more Aaron, huh?
The Arabic name is Harun. So,
All right, so a question to you. Now, I would actually request you, particularly from the GIFP's perspective, you've been leading the Dutch Fund for Climate and Nature and Development, and this is where you've been leading on behalf of WWF. Maybe there's some lessons we can learn from that and adopt for us as well. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, let me start also where it all started, because 10 years ago, on the back of the Accra commitment, governments have said that we need to go from the billions to the trillions, right? And on the back of that, there were a lot of commitments to blended finance vehicles. But it was our observation that blended finance was not delivering the promise. And actually, it's still not delivering the promise. You might have seen the Convergence report last month, where it said that the total volume of blended finance investments have halved over the past year. So blended finance is still a potential instrument, but it's not delivering. And why is that? It's not delivering on volume, but it's also not delivering on impact. I think not enough money and effort is put into origination. So how do we develop pipeline that can go into these blended finance instruments? And another problem is that these projects are engaged on a project-by-project basis, not really looking at the landscapes in which these agricultural, water, and other sectoral projects take place. So WWF started to develop a concept which is called bankable nature solutions. You have seen it on the slide, where on one hand we put a lot of emphasis on origination, so working with civil society, working with private sector to develop projects to an investment level, but also taking that landscape approach into consideration. So really quantifying to what extent that private sector investment will contribute to nature positive and climate resilience in at the landscape level. Thankfully, the Dutch government wrote out a tender, 200 million. We set together a consortium with 2 banks and 2 NGOs. The 200 million went, for 30 million went into the origination side to really work with private companies to get to an investment level, and the other 170 went into blended finance instruments, so subordinated debt equity. We're now 4 years down the line and we mobilized 1.3 billion. So I think it's a success, and it's our contribution together with these other investors, well, to the blended finance dilemma.
No, thank you. In fact, I have to say personally for me as partners with WWF, this was the biggest inspiration. We had a track record to motivate this, and this is what everyone else is willing to buy. I'm mindful of the time. We actually have taken more time than allocated, but I think it will be unfair if we don't give an opportunity to the audience. So if we can take one question from the audience, if there is any, and then we will have a closing remarks, basically, because in the interim, I've been told a few times already that we are overrunning. Sorry? No, but do we have more time? No, we don't. Okay, yeah. Right. So so we have one question there. So just a quick one, yeah? Okay.
Willie Losi from the Kingdom of Tonga, South Pacific. I'm just suggesting to you, including the Pacific on your initiative, especially the Kingdom of Tonga. We're facing the biggest disasters of climate change. Malo Abito.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. I think that's fine. So, Tiana? I think that was just a comment, right? So, yeah, just a comment. There is a question there. Yes. Just one.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm called Musa Usman Damba. I'm from Cameroon. We are indigenous pastoralist people organization. Follow-up conversation is extremely important, especially about Islamic finance for climate change. I think it's extremely important. But my worry or little you have said about the private sector, especially the private sector. How does it get involved in this mechanism? Thank you. We are talking mostly about government, but we want to know more about how the private sector and especially the civil society organization are going to involve in this. Thank you.
This is exactly what this program is all about. So in a blended finance approach is what we have talked about, is what we will use to attract private sector into it. But you are right, and this is what we are trying to unlock. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so should we stand up? Can we have a quick photograph, please? Thank you. Okay. Leila? Leila? Leila?